All the suitors were turned away, until the alien princess pointed at the silent human. Ships of every shape and color zipped between the spires, carrying visitors from far corners of the galaxy. It was a time of celebration and anticipation. Every century, the alien Princess Lurel held the selection ceremony, a gathering of the most talented, skilled, and powerful beings from hundreds of worlds. For centuries, her family had carefully observed potential suitors, each hoping to win the honor of being chosen by a princess whose wisdom and insight were as famous as her beauty. The plaza at the top of the central tower gleamed with polished stone, reflecting the twin suns that hovered over Zyphora. Suited beings from the desert world of Narkin mingled with the translucent Gelari from the gas giant Xylo and the towering, horned warriors from Orthis. Each carried themselves with pride, confident that their achievements would make them stand out. They had been preparing for years, polishing skills, refining appearances, and rehearsing speeches, all to impress Princess Lurel. Among the crowd, unnoticed at first, stood a human. Evan, he was not dressed in ceremonial robes or armored in elegant plating. Instead, he wore the standard uniform of a cultural delegation, a simple tunic and practical boots. Unlike the other suitors, he carried no ambition to impress. He had been sent as an observer, to learn, record, and share humanity's culture with Zyphora. He blended in easily, his presence small and quiet amid the galaxy's most dazzling visitors. The ceremony began with a soft hum that rolled through the plaza, the kind of sound that vibrated in the bones rather than the ears. Lurel appeared, stepping out onto the balcony above the crowd. She was tall, her skin a pale, iridescent blue that shimmered in the sunlight. Her eyes, golden and deep, scanned the gathering calmly, observing the suitors as if she were reading them like an open book. A murmur went through the assembly. None of the visitors dared speak. The moment demanded respect, and everyone knew it. One by one, the suitors attempted to impress her. First came Varnak of Orthis, the towering horned warrior, who roared loudly and demonstrated his strength by lifting a massive crystalline block with one hand. The crowd gasped, impressed, but Lurel merely raised an eyebrow. "Strength alone is not enough," she said softly, her voice carrying clearly to all. Next was Selin of Xylo, a translucent being who could shift the colors of her body to form intricate patterns. She danced in the air, her colors changing in dazzling complexity, trying to mesmerize the princess. Some in the crowd cheered, enchanted by her skill, but Lurel's expression remained calm. "Beauty without understanding does not hold meaning," she said, dismissing the performance with a gentle shake of her head. One after another, suitors displayed speed, cunning, wisdom, or technical skill. Each attempt was met with polite acknowledgement, but none earned her approval. Even as the crowd buzzed with admiration for these grand feats, Lurel's eyes occasionally flicked toward Evan. He moved quietly, unnoticed, helping a nervous child who had wandered too close to a floating railing. Without fanfare, he guided the child safely back, offering a small, reassuring smile. Lurel's curiosity deepened. She had seen many visitors, many suitors, but none like this human. He did not seek attention. He did not boast. He simply acted with calm confidence and simple kindness. That quality, she realized, was rare in the galaxy. It was not the flashy displays of power or intellect that caught her attention, but the quiet way he moved through the world, seeing things others ignored. The suitors were unaware of Lurel's focus on Evan. They continued their attempts to impress, each trying to outshine the other. Some performed elaborate displays of psychic power, creating illusions that made dragons soar over the city or stars dance in the air. Others recited ancient poetry, composed music that echoed in the minds of listeners, or demonstrated technological marvels that no human eye could fully comprehend. Yet with every attempt, Lurel remained calm and still. She watched, not with boredom, but with a quiet, growing interest in the observer at the edge of the plaza. Evan, for his part, observed everything. He watched the suitors, noting their strengths and weaknesses, their gestures, and the reactions of the crowd. But he did not judge or compare himself. To him, this was a learning opportunity, a chance to see how beings from across the galaxy lived, interacted, and valued their own qualities. When a small Gelari creature stumbled, he instinctively reached out to steady it, murmuring something in his own language. The creature chirped, nuzzling his hand, and Evan smiled quietly. No one else had noticed, or if they did, They ignored it in favor of more dramatic displays. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the floating towers, Lurel called the ceremony to a pause. She descended gracefully to the plaza, her presence commanding silence. "You all come from distant worlds," she said, her voice clear and melodic. "And each of you brings skills, talents, and stories that are extraordinary. Yet what I seek is not just greatness in display. I seek understanding, insight, and the ability to see the world beyond oneself." The suitors shifted nervously. Many were confident that their next performance would finally win her favor. Some exchanged anxious glances, realizing for the first time that the rules they had followed for generations might not apply to this selection. Evan remained where he was, quiet, listening. He did not need to perform or boast. His humanity, his way of seeing the world, was already different from the galaxy's norms, and it naturally aligned with Lurel's own values. Lurel walked slowly among the suitors, her gaze piercing yet gentle. When she reached the edge of the crowd, her eyes met Evan's. There was no fanfare, no announcement, only the recognition of someone who moved differently through the world, who saw what others overlooked. She studied him for a moment, and a faint smile touched her lips. In the midst of grandeur, pride, and spectacle, she had found a simple truth. Quiet strength could be more powerful than the loudest display. The assembly paused, sensing a subtle shift in the air. Even the most confident suitors felt a momentary uncertainty, though none could understand why. Lurel's attention, for the first time, seemed focused on someone outside the expected circle of contenders. "Tomorrow," she said finally, her voice carrying across the plaza, "the trials will begin. Each of you will demonstrate not only skill but insight, judgment, and character. Let your actions speak, for words alone are not enough." She stepped back, ascending the balcony once more, her form bathed in the glow of the setting suns. Evan stayed where he was, quietly taking in the scene. The suitors were anxious, talking among themselves about strategies and displays. He did not need to prepare. The trials would reveal what he already understood, that observing, understanding, and acting with care could carry more weight than any grand gesture. As night fell over Zyphora, lights blinked across the floating towers, and the stars of distant galaxies shone brighter in the clear sky. The city hummed softly with life, ships moving like fireflies above the clouds. For Evan, it was another world, another culture, another step in humanity's journey across the stars. And for Lurel, it was a moment of quiet recognition, the first spark of curiosity about the silent human who might change everything she thought she knew about strength, courage, and character. In that moment, the galaxy felt larger than anyone had imagined, filled not just with power and display, but with quiet potential waiting to be discovered. And so, the stage was set. The suitors would soon compete in ways they had never imagined, and one silent human, unnoticed yet extraordinary, had already caught the attention of the princess. The first step of a story that might shape the future of humanity and the galaxy itself was quietly unfolding beneath the violet skies of Zyphora, where all the suitors were being turned away, except for the one who had nothing to prove. The next morning, Zyphora's skies were painted in shades of orange and gold, the twin suns rising together to cast long, glowing shadows across the floating city. The air was crisp, and the plaza was already filled with beings from hundreds of worlds, each preparing for the trials of selection. Suits glimmered, wings stretched, and eyes shone with anticipation. This was the day that would determine who might win Princess Lurel's favor. Evan arrived quietly, as always, observing rather than preparing. He carried a small satchel with notes, sketches, and a simple tool kit for problem-solving. While other suitors practiced dazzling displays of their abilities, he wandered among the plaza, noting the details that most overlooked. A Jelari child struggling to balance on a glowing bridge, a mechanical drone caught in the wind, a group of Narcan elders arguing over directions. He did not interfere unless necessary, but when he did, it was with gentle efficiency and quiet confidence. The first trial began with a display of intelligence and strategy. A holographic simulation filled the sky, showing a fictional planet in crisis. The suitors were instructed to solve problems quickly, redirect unstable energy flows, prevent simulated natural disasters, and mediate disputes between holographic populations. The task was complex, designed to test quick thinking, creativity, and the ability to consider multiple perspectives. Varnock of Orthize went first. He approached the simulation with force. He moved massive structures, rearranging them to block hazards and protect the holographic populations. The solution worked temporarily, but it ignored subtle consequences. Floods appeared in unexpected areas, and his confidence faltered when he realized he had not anticipated the chain reaction. Next, Selen of Xylo took her turn. She used her translucent form to interact with the simulation in a beautiful display of color and light. She moved structures delicately, rearranged energy flows with grace, and created dazzling patterns that impressed the crowd. Yet her approach was too aesthetic, designed to look elegant rather than practical. Some holographic populations were left unprotected, and the judges noted her lack of balance between beauty and effectiveness. When it was Evan's turn, he stepped forward calmly. He observed the simulation for a moment, his eyes scanning the details others had ignored. A weak bridge on the holographic planet, a neglected energy conduit, the interactions between populations. He didn't try to show off. He didn't attempt to make a grand display. Instead, Evan worked quietly and methodically. He reinforced weak structures, redirected energy flows safely, and solved disputes between holographic populations with small, practical gestures. Each solution was simple, direct, and effective. There was no spectacle, no bright lights, no dramatic gestures, but the simulation stabilized completely, every population safe, every risk accounted for. The judges, invisible to the audience, nodded quietly in approval. The crowd was silent at first, unsure how to react. The flashy performances of the other suitors had impressed them, but this human had solved the challenge without fanfare. It was a quiet kind of brilliance, one that demanded attention if one looked closely enough. Princess Laurel watched with her usual calm expression. Her golden eyes lingered on Evan longer than any other suitor. There was a clarity in his actions she had never seen before, a kind of logic combined with care, a combination of insight and empathy that transcended cultural differences. She felt a subtle spark of curiosity and admiration. The second trial tested morality and compassion. Each suitor was placed in a scenario where they had to make decisions affecting the lives of others. There were holographic creatures facing danger, simulated conflicts between civilizations, and problems that required careful judgment rather than brute strength or clever tricks. Most suitors struggled. Varnock acted decisively but harshly, prioritizing results over well-being. Some of the Jelari suitors used their illusions to manipulate situations in their favor. Others tried to perform heroic gestures that looked impressive but failed to consider consequences. Evan, again, took a different approach. He did not rush. He observed the consequences of each choice. When presented with a holographic population in danger, he prioritized saving lives over appearance or personal advantage. When conflicts arose, he spoke to each party quietly, asking questions, listening, and guiding them toward compromise. His solutions were not flashy, but they were fair, kind, and effective. Laurel's interest deepened. Here was someone who saw beyond power, beyond beauty, beyond status. Here was someone who understood that actions, small or large, could carry meaning far beyond themselves. She realized that in this human, there was a rare combination of intelligence, empathy, and courage. He did not need to speak loudly or perform spectacularly. His presence and decisions spoke volumes. The third trial tested creativity and adaptability. The suitors were given tools and materials from multiple planets. Metals that could bend light, liquids that changed color when touched, crystals that hummed with energy. They were instructed to create something meaningful, a device, an artwork, a solution to a problem that the galaxy faced. Many suitors struggled to combine the alien materials effectively. Some created objects that were beautiful but useless. Others built functional machines that were dangerous if mishandled. Evan, however, approached the task calmly. He observed the properties of each material, thinking through possibilities. He constructed a device that could purify contaminated water while providing energy for a small village. It was simple, practical, and elegant. The crowd murmured in surprise as the judges demonstrated the device's effectiveness. No one had expected a human to combine practicality and creativity in such a thoughtful way. By mid-afternoon, whispers spread through the crowd. "Have you seen the human? He does not compete like the others, and yet he succeeds where they fail." Even the most confident suitors began to notice Evan, unsure how to respond to someone who did not perform yet still excelled. Laurel descended once more into the plaza. She moved slowly among the suitors, observing, listening, and noting details others might have missed. When she reached Evan, she stopped. For a moment there was quiet, as if the city itself held its breath. "You do not perform for attention," she said softly, her voice carrying naturally across the plaza. "And yet you succeed where others fail. Why?" Evan looked at her, surprised that she had spoken directly to him, but he answered simply, "I do not seek attention. I try to understand, to see what is needed, and then act. That is how I can help." Laurel's expression softened. This was what she had been seeking, someone who did not merely act for recognition, but someone who acted with thought, care, and purpose. She realized that in the galaxy, where pride and spectacle often mattered more than results, humanity's quiet approach could be a force unlike any other. The sun dipped lower, painting the floating towers in deep shades of purple and pink. The first day of trials concluded with a celebration of skill, thought, and insight. The other suitors were proud of their performances, though they could not ignore the quiet impact of the human among them. As the crowd dispersed, Laurel remained on the balcony, watching Evan from above. She noticed how he helped a small group of children learn to balance on the plaza's glowing paths, how he adjusted a drone's malfunctioning sensor without anyone noticing, and how he quietly mediated a disagreement between two alien delegates. Each action was small, but together they revealed something extraordinary, a human who could understand, adapt, and care in ways others often overlooked. That night, Zyphora glowed with thousands of lights, floating lanterns drifting in the sky, carrying messages and wishes across the city. Evan sat on the edge of a tower, sketching the scene, recording details for his reports. He did not know that he had already captured Princess Laurel's attention in ways no other suitor had, and Laurel, for her part, felt a strange sense of excitement. The trials had just begun, but already she sensed that the silent human might not only challenge expectations, he might also teach the galaxy something it had never known. In the quiet moments before sleep, Evan reflected on the day. He had seen strength, beauty, cleverness, and skill from beings across the stars. He had seen pride and ambition, and the ways that display could sometimes blind others to what truly mattered. He had also seen something rare, a willingness to notice the small, to value empathy, and to act with purpose rather than for glory. Somewhere above, Laurel watched, her mind already imagining how the trials might unfold. For the first time in centuries, she felt uncertain of the outcome, and yet certain of something else. This human, this quiet observer from a distant planet, might show her a new path forward, one shaped not by spectacle but by understanding, courage, and heart. The galaxy outside continued to hum with life, ships gliding through the violet sky, lights twinkling in distant cities, and stars shining in patterns that had been unchanged for millennia. Yet on Zyphora, in this floating city of beauty and ceremony, a new kind of story was beginning. It was not a story of grand displays or ancient traditions. It was a story of quiet strength, of observation, and of the subtle, profound ways that a single human could stand out in a galaxy that had never truly understood them. As the night deepened, Evan closed his notebook, unaware that the princess herself had already marked him as someone worth watching. And in the quiet palace, Laurel allowed herself a small smile. The trials were only beginning, but already one silent human had made his presence known in ways that would ripple across worlds. The morning sun rose over Zyphora, painting the floating city in soft gold and violet shades. The plaza was alive again, filled with suitors, observers, and curious beings from countless worlds. Today was the third day of trials, and the atmosphere was electric. Everyone could feel that the challenges were about to become more difficult, testing not only skills but thought, creativity, and judgment. Evan arrived quietly, as he always did, carrying his notebook and tools. Unlike most of the other suitors, he did not stretch, practice, or rehearse. Instead, he walked calmly through the plaza, observing the preparations. Engineers tested devices, Jelari practiced color manipulations, and Narcan warriors ran through mental puzzles designed to challenge their reasoning. The excitement was palpable, but Evan's eyes caught details others ignored. He noticed a Jelari child struggling to balance a floating crystal. He adjusted it subtly with a small tool, helping it stabilize. He observed a malfunctioning energy conduit and quietly fixed the connection. And he listened, listening carefully to whispers of the crowd, to the murmurs of the plaza, and to the faint hums of the city itself. Every detail, he knew, might be important for what was coming next. Princess Lurel appeared above the crowd on the balcony, her golden eyes scanning the suitors. Today's trial was called the Test of Minds. It was designed to challenge intelligence, problem-solving, and decision-making. But unlike yesterday's trial, it also required adaptability, handling unexpected situations, and working with resources from across the galaxy. A holographic city appeared in the sky above the plaza. It was detailed, intricate, and fragile, with structures made of crystal, light, and strange alloys. The suitors were instructed to solve multiple crises, redirect energy flows to prevent collapse, resolve disputes among holographic populations, and protect vulnerable structures. Success would not be measured by speed alone, but by the quality and thoughtfulness of each solution. Varnock of Orthais went first. He approached the challenge with confidence, using sheer strength and decisiveness. He moved structures quickly, rearranging them to avoid immediate disaster. But his solutions were rigid. When a sudden surge of energy appeared, threatening a distant part of the holographic city, Varnock had not planned for it. Parts of the city collapsed, and he roared in frustration, realizing that force alone was not enough. Next came Selene of Xylo. She moved gracefully, shifting colors and patterns to anticipate problems. Her display was beautiful, mesmerizing the audience with light and motion. Yet her solutions focused on aesthetics more than functionality. While some areas were protected, others were neglected, and a minor collapse occurred. The judges noted her creativity but questioned her practical judgment. When it was Evan's turn, he approached calmly, observing the holographic city as a whole. He did not act immediately. Instead, he walked along the edge of the plaza, studying each problem. He noticed a structure that was poorly supported, a population in danger, and an energy flow that might become unstable. He thought carefully, considering the consequences of each action before acting. He reinforced weak structures first, using the materials provided. He redirected energy flows gradually, ensuring stability while avoiding harm to the population. And he spoke softly to the holographic citizens, mediating conflicts and guiding solutions. Each action was precise, efficient, and thoughtful. The crowd watched in silence. Nothing about Evan's actions was flashy. There were no dramatic light shows, no loud roars, no sweeping gestures. Yet one by one the city stabilized, every population was safe, every energy flow balanced, every weak structure reinforced. By the time he stepped back, the holographic city stood as if untouched by disaster. A murmur passed through the plaza. Many could not understand how someone so quiet, so unassuming, could succeed where others had struggled. The judges nodded in approval. Princess Lurel's eyes lingered on Evan, a faint smile forming on her lips. Here was someone who did not seek attention, yet who solved problems with clarity, creativity, and care. The second part of the trial required adaptability. The holographic city now changed unexpectedly. Bridges collapsed, energy conduits shifted, and disputes arose among populations in unforeseen ways. Most suitors panicked. They tried to react with speed or spectacle, but their plans failed because they had prepared only for predictable outcomes. Evan, however, adapted. He moved calmly from problem to problem, observing each change before deciding how to respond. When a bridge collapsed, he reinforced it with materials nearby. When energy flowed unpredictably, he rerouted it with careful calculation. When two populations argued, he mediated patiently, listening to both sides and helping them find compromise. His human approach, thoughtful, flexible, and patient, allowed him to succeed where others struggled. Princess Lurel watched him closely. She had seen many beings in her life, many talented and powerful, but Evan's quiet wisdom was rare. He did not try to impress. He did not seek admiration. He simply observed, thought, and acted with purpose. In that moment, she realized that intelligence alone was not enough to lead or create meaningful solutions. It was the combination of observation, understanding, and empathy that truly mattered. The final part of the trial was a moral challenge. The holographic city simulated a crisis in which the life of a few could be saved at the expense of many, or the city could be preserved with careful planning, but delayed intervention. Most suitors rushed to act without considering consequences. Some made selfish decisions, trying to save only themselves or to gain the princess's attention. Others attempted risky maneuvers that endangered parts of the city. Evan took a deep breath. He considered the situation carefully, weighing the options and thinking about long-term effects. He decided to act in a way that balanced safety and fairness. He protected as many as possible, minimizing harm while considering the needs of all populations. It was not a perfect solution, but it was thoughtful, compassionate, and effective. When the trial ended, silence fell over the plaza. The judges whispered among themselves, impressed by Evan's reasoning and decision-making. The other suitors looked at him in disbelief. How could someone so quiet, so unassuming, succeed in ways they could not? Some were frustrated. Others were genuinely curious. Princess Lurel descended into the plaza, her presence commanding attention. She walked slowly among the suitors, her eyes moving over each one. When she reached Evan, she paused. There was a quiet energy about him, a calm confidence that stood out amid the chaos of ambition, pride, and display. "You approach problems differently," she said softly. "You do not seek attention, you do not try to impress. Yet your solutions succeed where others struggle. Why?" Evan looked up at her, surprised that she had addressed him directly. "I try to see what is needed first," he said simply. "I listen, I observe, and I act carefully. I do not need to be noticed to do what is right." Lurel's eyes softened. This was what she had been seeking, a being who acted from understanding, not pride, from observation, not spectacle, from heart, not ego. "And yet," she said, a faint smile forming, "your actions speak louder than anyone else's words or displays." The crowd watched in awe as the princess continued to speak quietly to the human who had already captured her attention. The other suitors could not understand, but the message was clear. Strength, intelligence, and talent were not enough without thought, care, and insight. As the trial ended, the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the plaza. Evan walked quietly through the crowd, helping where he could, noticing details that others overlooked. He adjusted a failing lantern, steadied a nervous child, and guided lost visitors to their destinations. Each act was small, unnoticed by most, but it revealed the depth of his character. Princess Lurel returned to her balcony, watching. She had seen brilliance, strength, and beauty throughout her life, but she had never seen a combination like this. Intelligence guided by empathy, creativity paired with practicality, observation combined with decisive action. She realized that this human, this quiet observer, was extraordinary. The suitors gathered around, discussing the results of the trial. Some tried to convince themselves that they had done well. Others whispered about the human who had quietly outperformed them all. The city buzzed with talk, but Evan remained calm, unaware of the attention he had drawn. As night fell over Zyphora, lanterns floated into the sky, casting soft light across the towers. Ships returned to the docks, and the plaza emptied slowly. Evan sat quietly on the edge of a tower, sketching the events of the day and recording his observations. He did not know that he had already made a lasting impression on Princess Lurel, who lingered above, watching, thinking, and feeling something new. For centuries, Zyphora had seen suitors of power, skill, and beauty. But for the first time, the princess had seen something different, something rare and subtle. A human who did not perform for attention, who acted with insight, compassion, and intelligence, and who quietly stood out in ways that the galaxy had not anticipated. And in that quiet, golden moment, a new story was beginning, a story of understanding, of courage, and of the remarkable ways humanity could shine across the stars. The trials were not yet over. Challenges awaited that would test strength, adaptability, and heart even further. But already Evan had shown that sometimes the quietest observer could make the loudest impact. And Princess Lurel, for the first time in her long life, felt a spark of excitement about the possibilities that lay ahead. The galaxy was watching, but it had not yet seen the full potential of the silent human who moved among them. And as Zyphora glowed under twin moons, one truth became clear. Humanity had arrived, not through power or spectacle, but through insight, compassion, and quiet brilliance. The next morning, the skies above Zyphora were alive with movement. Ships from distant galaxies hovered in formation, their lights reflecting on the floating towers. Today was the fourth day of the selection ceremony, the day the suitors hoped would secure them favor with Princess Lurel. But among them, one quiet human walked calmly, taking careful notes and observing everything. Evan did not rush. He had no need to. He had spent the previous days learning, listening, and understanding the people, creatures, and systems of Zyphora. Unlike the other suitors, he had no desire to impress anyone. He simply wanted to act thoughtfully and wisely. Yet already, his calm actions had begun to draw attention. Whispers circulated among the suitors. "Have you seen the human?" Then, as always, they lingered on Evan. The crowd could see the intensity of her gaze, though she spoke softly. "Today's trial will be the most important yet," she announced. "It is a test not only of skill and intelligence, but of insight, leadership, and courage. Each of you must demonstrate your ability to make decisions that affect others. Remember, every action has consequences and every choice matters." The first task was a challenge of collaboration. The suitors were divided into groups and given control of floating platforms, each representing different regions of a holographic city. Natural disasters and unexpected conflicts arose, and the groups were tasked with protecting the city's inhabitants while ensuring that the regions could thrive. Varnock immediately tried to dominate his group. He barked orders, moved platforms with brute force, and expected obedience. Some members followed, but others resisted, frustrated by his heavy-handed approach. Structures collapsed, minor injuries appeared, and his group struggled despite his strength. Selin tried a different approach, using her color-shifting abilities to create illusions of safety and prosperity. Her group was impressed at first, but when a sudden storm struck, her illusions offered no real protection. Her group faltered, and the judges noted that creativity without practicality could only go so far. Evan, however, approached his group differently. He did not command or perform. Instead, he observed, listened, and guided. When a disagreement arose between two beings from different worlds, he spoke calmly, asking each one to explain their perspective. When a structure began to wobble, he quietly suggested a solution that used their combined resources effectively. His leadership was quiet but powerful. He did not demand attention, he did not boast, and yet his group worked together seamlessly. Structures were stabilized, populations were protected, and the holographic city thrived. Even the judges noticed that his group's coordination was stronger than any other. The second part of the trial was a test of innovation. The suitors were given resources from multiple worlds: metals that floated, liquids that could glow, crystals that stored energy. Each was to create something that would improve the holographic city. Many suitors rushed to make grand inventions. Some built massive machines that dazzled the audience but were impractical. Others designed beautiful structures that looked impressive but could not serve the city's real needs. Evan approached calmly. He studied the materials carefully, thinking about how they could work together. Slowly, he began to assemble a network of small devices that could purify water, generate energy, and provide shelter. It was simple, elegant, and practical. It worked without drama, without spectacle, yet its effectiveness was undeniable. The crowd began to notice. Murmurs spread. "Look at the human. He doesn't shout or show off, yet his work is perfect." She had watched countless suitors over the centuries, each trying to impress her with power, skill, or beauty. But Evan's quiet intelligence, combined with his empathy and adaptability, was something she had never seen. He did not seek approval, yet his actions spoke louder than any performance. The final part of the trial was the test of courage and judgment. A scenario appeared in which a small group of holographic citizens was trapped on a floating platform that was slowly sinking. The suitors could choose to act immediately and save them, risking their own city structures, or wait to devise a careful plan that would minimize risk to everyone. Many suitors acted impulsively. Some rushed to save the citizens but caused damage elsewhere. Others hesitated, calculating risks, but lost precious time, and the citizens were endangered. Evan paused. He carefully evaluated the situation. Acting too quickly could endanger others, but waiting too long could harm the trapped citizens. He calculated the best course of action and coordinated his group. They moved quickly yet cautiously, reinforcing platforms, guiding citizens to safety, and ensuring stability across the city. His solution was effective, thoughtful, and humane. As the simulation ended, the holographic city remained intact, every population safe, and every system functioning. The judges conferred quietly, impressed with the humans' combination of courage, intelligence, and care. Laurel stepped forward into the plaza. The suitors gathered around, waiting anxiously for her judgment. Some were confident, others uncertain. She looked at each one with her golden eyes, her expression unreadable. "Many of you have shown strength, beauty, creativity, and power," she said. "Some have acted with pride. Some have acted with skill, but one among you has shown something different. One has acted not for recognition, not for fame, not for display, but for understanding, for care, for insight. He has demonstrated the qualities I seek not in spectacle, but in quiet, thoughtful action." The crowd murmured. The suitors looked at one another in confusion, wondering whom she referred to. Then slowly, all eyes turned to Evan, standing quietly at the edge of the plaza, observing, helping, and noticing what others missed. Laurel extended her hand, pointing toward him. "It is you," she said softly. "The one who acts with insight, who leads with understanding, who shows courage through thought and care. You have my attention and you have my respect." The plaza fell silent. The other suitors were stunned. Some felt disbelief, some felt frustration. Some, though quietly, felt admiration. No one had expected this selection, not the proud warriors, not the brilliant artists, not the cunning inventors. The human had quietly outshone them all. Evan stepped forward slowly, unsure of how to respond. He had never sought recognition. He had not performed for the crowd, and yet here was the princess herself, acknowledging him for his quiet strength, intelligence, and care. I am honored," he said softly. "I only tried to do what was right and helpful," Laurel smiled. "And that is exactly why you stand out. The galaxy often values spectacle, power, and display, but true greatness is found in understanding, empathy, and thoughtful action. You have shown that humanity, though quiet and simple in appearance, carries strength that few have seen." The crowd erupted in whispers and astonished chatter. Some suitors approached him hesitantly, curious to understand how someone so unassuming could have succeeded. Others watched from a distance, unsure what to make of this unexpected choice. For the first time, the galaxy seemed to pause and notice humanity, not as fragile, inexperienced, or limited, but as thoughtful, adaptable, and capable in ways that others often overlooked. The quiet observer had proven that insight, courage, and empathy could stand out even amid brilliance, strength, and spectacle. Laurel stepped down from her balcony, her golden eyes meeting Evan's directly. There was a spark of curiosity, admiration, and perhaps something more. She realized that the trials had not only tested the suitors, but had also revealed a truth she had not fully grasped. That quiet intelligence and understanding could change perspectives, even across the galaxy. The other suitors, some disappointed, some respectful, began to understand that the selection ceremony had taken a new direction. It was no longer about the loudest display, the grandest skill, or the most dazzling talent. It was about insight, care, courage, and quiet brilliance, and humanity had just shown that it possessed all of these qualities in abundance. As the sun set behind the floating towers, casting the city in gold and purple, Evan and Laurel stood apart from the crowd. She watched him not with expectation, but with genuine curiosity and respect. He had proven himself in ways no one else had, not through performance, not through spectacle, but through observation, thought, and action. For Evan, it had been another day of learning, observing, and helping. He did not know yet what the future would bring, but he felt the quiet satisfaction of having done what he believed was right. And for Laurel, the quiet human had become more than just a contender. He had become a revelation. The galaxy, for the first time, had paused to notice what humanity could offer. Strength was not only physical. Brilliance was not only flashy. Courage was not only dramatic. And the quiet, thoughtful actions of one human had begun to change perceptions, challenging centuries of expectation. As night fell over Zyphora, the city glowed with soft light from floating lanterns and distant stars. The trials had ended for the day, but the story was far from over. For Evan, the quiet observer, and Laurel, the princess who had seen something extraordinary, a new chapter was beginning, a chapter where humanity's quiet strength would shine in ways the galaxy had never imagined. And in the hushed wonder of the plaza, as the stars reflected on the floating towers, one truth became clear. Sometimes, the silent, thoughtful actions of one human could speak louder than the greatest displays of power, skill, or brilliance. The morning sky over Zyphora shimmered, with shades of lavender and gold, as the floating city awakened to its final day of the selection ceremony. Ships from distant worlds hovered above, their lights reflecting on the towers' polished surfaces. Today was not just the last trial, it was the moment that would define the future of many lives, and for the first time the galaxy felt a quiet tension. Evan walked calmly through the plaza, notebook in hand, his eyes scanning everything with the careful attention that had always defined him. The other suitors were nervous, preparing elaborate displays, practicing speeches, and trying to impress in ways they had been taught for centuries. But Evan had no need for preparation. He did not perform for attention or seek applause. He moved quietly, helping where needed, observing with care and noting everything around him. Princess Laurel appeared above the crowd, descending slowly with her golden eyes scanning the assembly. Today's final trial was called the Test of Unity and Vision. It would test not only intelligence, courage, and creativity, but also the ability to inspire, guide, and bring together diverse beings for a common goal. The trial began with a complex simulation. A holographic galaxy appeared, filled with planets, civilizations, and natural phenomena. The suitors were instructed to create solutions that could prevent disasters, resolve conflicts, and improve the lives of countless beings. Success required collaboration, strategy, and foresight. Varnock acted first, relying on sheer force and confidence. He tried to solve each problem quickly, often making decisions without consulting others. His methods caused chaos in some regions, and while he solved immediate problems, long-term issues arose. His group struggled, frustrated by his rigid approach. Selen of Xylo attempted a more artistic solution. She used light, color, and illusion to guide civilizations and create harmony. Many were impressed by the beauty of her work, but when unexpected events occurred, her illusions could not adapt. Some civilizations suffered while her display remained visually perfect. Evan approached the simulation calmly. He did not try to impress anyone. Instead, he observed carefully, studying the galaxy and its problems. When conflicts arose between civilizations, he listened, asking questions, mediating disputes patiently. When disasters threatened, he acted carefully, combining resources from multiple planets to prevent damage. His approach was quiet, deliberate, and effective. Rather than rushing to demonstrate skill or power, he guided, adapted, and collaborated. Slowly, the holographic galaxy stabilized. Systems worked in harmony, conflicts were resolved, and populations thrived. The judges nodded quietly, impressed by the humans' combination of thought, care, and intelligence. The crowd murmured in surprise. No one had expected a human, quiet, and unassuming, to succeed where others struggled. Even the suitors looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. Laurel's gaze lingered on Evan. She had seen many beings over the centuries, brilliant, strong, beautiful, clever, but none had approached challenges as he did. He did not seek attention, yet he had proven that quiet, thoughtful action could be the most powerful force of all. The second part of the final trial tested leadership and collaboration. The suitors were given teams composed of diverse species, each with unique strengths and challenges. They were asked to coordinate their teams to solve a series of problems across multiple planets simultaneously. Varnock tried to dominate his team. His confidence faltered when his members resisted or disagreed. Selen attempted to impress with grand gestures and clever displays, but she failed to coordinate effectively with her team. The teams struggled, unable to achieve harmony. Evan's team, by contrast, worked seamlessly. He listened to each member, understood their strengths, and encouraged them to contribute their best. When problems arose, he calmly guided them toward solutions, combining skills in ways that no single individual could accomplish alone. His human way of leading was quiet but effective. He did not seek praise, and yet the galaxy responded to his guidance. Princess Laurel observed carefully. Here was something extraordinary, a human who did not lead through force or spectacle, but through understanding, empathy, and intelligence. He did not demand attention, he inspired it naturally. She realized that this was the quality she had been seeking, the ability to guide, support, and unify, not for glory, but because it was the right thing to do. The final segment of the trial was a moral and visionary challenge. The suitors were presented with a scenario in which a planet faced environmental collapse. The inhabitants were in danger, but solutions existed only through cooperation, ingenuity, and long-term planning. Immediate action without strategy could save some, but destroy the rest. Only careful vision could ensure lasting success. Many suitors acted impulsively, trying to solve the problem quickly. Some focused only on the most dramatic elements, while others sought to create displays that would impress the judges. Their efforts, though well-intentioned, were incomplete and short-sighted. Evan observed patiently. He analyzed the problem from every angle. He coordinated with his team, combining insights and skills. He implemented immediate safety measures for the most vulnerable while planning sustainable solutions for the planet's recovery. His actions were deliberate, thoughtful, and considerate of all factors. By the end of the simulation, the planet thrived once more. Its inhabitants were safe, and the environment showed signs of lasting stability. The judges nodded. Lurel's eyes shone with admiration. Here was a human who had demonstrated intelligence, empathy, courage, adaptability, and vision, qualities that many beings spent lifetimes trying to achieve. He had proven that humanity, though simple in appearance and quiet in demeanor, could excel in ways the galaxy had never truly understood. The plaza fell silent as Lurel descended to stand before the suitors. She raised her hand, her golden eyes sweeping across the assembly. "Many of you have shown skill, strength, beauty, and cleverness," she said. "But one has shown something different. One has acted with insight, with understanding, and with quiet courage. He has proven that leadership is not always loud, that intelligence is not always flashy, and that courage is not always dramatic. It is sometimes quiet, thoughtful, and steady. It is sometimes human." She extended her hand and pointed to Evan. Silence fell over the plaza. The other suitors stared in disbelief. The audience murmured in astonishment. The human who had not performed, who had not boasted, who had quietly observed and acted, had been chosen. Evan stepped forward slowly, unsure how to respond. He had never sought recognition. He had acted only according to what he believed was right, and yet here he was, acknowledged by the princess herself. I am honored," he said softly. "I only tried to understand and help." Lurel smiled warmly. "And that is why you stand out. You have shown humanity's quiet strength. You have shown that courage, intelligence, and leadership do not need spectacle. You have shown that observation, empathy, and thoughtful action can change worlds. Today, you have not only proven yourself, but also humanity." The other suitors, some disappointed and some impressed, began to understand that the rules of the selection ceremony had changed. It was no longer about power, spectacle, or status. It was about character, insight, and heart. Humanity had quietly but powerfully demonstrated its worth to the galaxy. As the crowd dispersed, Lurel and Evan stood together on the edge of a tower. The city glowed beneath them, its lights reflecting in the skies above. Ships from distant worlds moved slowly across the horizon, their passengers whispering about the human who had quietly transformed their understanding. "You have a rare gift," Lurel said softly. "You see, understand, and act without seeking praise. It is a quality many spend lifetimes trying to achieve." Evan smiled. "I only try to do what is right. I did not expect recognition." "And yet," she said, "it has brought recognition not only to you but to humanity. The galaxy has noticed. They have begun to understand." Over the following days, the story spread across Zyphora and beyond. Humans, once considered fragile or limited, were now seen as beings of quiet strength, intelligence, and courage. Alliances were formed, curiosity grew, and many species began to respect humanity's unique approach to problem-solving and leadership. Evan, still quiet and humble, continued to observe, learn, and guide. He helped Lurel understand human ways, sharing insights that bridged worlds and cultures. Together, they began to plan initiatives that would bring peace, understanding, and cooperation across the galaxy. For Lurel, the quiet human had become more than a suitor. He was a partner, a mind she respected, and a symbol of a new era. And for humanity, the selection ceremony marked a turning point. They were no longer unknown, underestimated, or dismissed. Their quiet strength, thoughtful action, and courage had finally been recognized. As the twin suns set over Zyphora, the floating city glowed with soft light, reflecting in the eyes of those who had witnessed history. Ships carried stories of humanity's arrival, whispers of respect and curiosity spreading across the stars. And in the heart of the city, Princess Lurel and Evan looked out over the horizon, knowing that this was only the beginning of a new era, a time when humanity's quiet brilliance would shine across the galaxy. The trials had ended. The suitors had been judged. And one silent human had shown the galaxy what it truly meant to be extraordinary. Not through power, not through spectacle, not through words, but through insight, courage, empathy, and thoughtful action. A new era had begun. And humanity, quietly and without fanfare, had arrived.